The May 6th council meeting of the City Council of the City of Issaquah, Washington is called to order at 7 p.m. And the council and I invite those who are present to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag if they wish. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item on the council meeting's agenda is an item called audience comments. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the City Council on topics of interest or concern to them. And the guidelines for public participation is that we ask that when you're recognized, you please come over and use the lectern and the microphone so that you may be seen and heard by those in council chambers as well as those who are viewing the council meeting on Government Access Channel 21. We further ask that you state your name, your address, and if you wish to emphasize a relationship to the city, such as you are a resident, a property owner, a business owner, whatever it is that you feel is important for the council to know, please feel free to do so at that time. We ask further that you limit comments to 5 minutes or fewer, and if you have written comments, please submit them to the city clerk. And with that, I will open audience comments and ask if there are people signed up to speak.
Yes, Scott Hilton, followed by Brent Jones.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. My name is Scott Hamilton. I live at 19727 Southeast 19th Street in Sammamish. I'm a customer of the Sammamish Water Plateau, the Sammamish Plateau Water and Sewer District. I served on the Sammamish Planning Commission for 4.5 years and on the Planning Advisory Board, which wrote the Sammamish Comprehensive Plan. Issaquah wants to assume that portion of the water district that is in Issaquah. Officials told the residents of Sammamish of Providence Point that the Growth Management Act mandates assumption of relevant water districts. As a former planning commissioner, I can tell you that this is factually incorrect. The GMA says, FW-13, within the urban area, as times and conditions warrant, cities should assume local urban services provided by special purpose districts. Note that this says should, not shall. Terms that are well understood by the planning commissioners and city officials, and therefore there is no mandate as claimed by city presentations to Providence Point. Additionally, I talked to one of the officers of this section of the GMA, and the intent of FW-13 was aimed at isolated SPDs, not a portion of a water district that in fact serves 1.8 times the residents that live in Issaquah and encompasses a landmass nearly 3 times the size of Issaquah. Further, RCW 36.78.110 says, in general, cities are the units of local government most appropriate to provide urban governmental services. There is no mandate in the statute either. The efforts mounted by Issaquah to assume the portion of the Sammamish Plateau Water and Sewer Districts amounts to a hostile takeover analogous to Wall Street corporate raiders. The efforts by Issaquah to obtain a permit from the Department of Ecology following the City Council's decision last December to allow infiltration into lakeside development in Issaquah Highlands is especially troubling. Several members of the City Council said last December that the aquifer affected by lakeside is your drinking water too, and you want to protect it. But this permit application with Ecology will allow polluted and contaminated stormwater to be injected into the aquifer. This stormwater is contaminated with fecal matter and other pollutants. This is not only contrary to your public statements and assurances of last December, it falls into the category of what are you thinking? As a customer of the water district and a resident of Sammamish and a former planning commissioner, I find it socially and civically irresponsible to pursue action that will affect tens of thousands of residents outside your city. We do not have a voice or recourse through the ballot process to express our concerns. You have kept this out of the public domain and largely secret from those of us affected. your own 2012 Water System Update Plan says, 3.8.2, Wellhead Protection Implementation, implement the Wellhead Protection Program to protect the city's groundwater supplies from degradation and coordinate implementation with the Sammamish Plateau Water and Sewer District. This, the city, again still quoting, the city should promote and participate in the aquifer recharge area and wellhead capture zones. These methods shall include, but not be limited to, regulation of land use, public outreach and education, and construction of capital facilities in the appropriate areas which aid in the protection of the wellheads. The Water District offered 3 times to co-fund construction of capital facilities for water treatment, and Issaquah rejected each of these offers. Now tonight, Mayor Freisinger said on the TV news that water filters through the ground, which cleans it. Well, yes and no. If this were strictly true, there would be no Superfund sites. There would be no Puget Sound Starts Here campaign at the cost of millions and millions of dollars to clean up Puget Sound, 40% of which pollution is derived from stormwater, nor would the Department of Ecology be holding the city's feet to strict standards in SMP updates. So I would really urge the city to take another look at, in fact, living up to your own stormwater system plan update and cooperate with the Sammamish Plateau Water District and, in fact, work together rather than attempt these hostile takeover efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Brent Jones?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Brent Jones. I reside at 2018 245th Avenue Southeast in Sammamish. I'm a resident and participate in the Sammamish Plateau Water and Sewer District. My background is from about 2001 through about 2006, I was on the Issaquah Rivers and Stream Board. And I'm also a practicing licensed geologic engineer here in the Northwest, and I've been doing geology and geology-related consulting since 1990. The current plans kind of caught me by surprise. Gail brought it to my attention about 3 weeks ago, so I don't have a policy presentation for you, but what I wanted to bring to your attention is that as a member of the Issaquah Rivers and Stream Board back in 2001, working up through about 2006, that this issue was front and present for a lot of the time that we were looking at the projects here in the here in Issaquah. And one of the critical factors that I think has kind of started the snowball of where we are today was that the developer at the Issaquah Highlands, as part of the two-party agreement, was required to infiltrate water up on top of the Issaquah Highlands when they were starting the build-out. At that time, they were this is 2000, 2001, they were having problems with infiltrating the groundwater at that time. They weren't achieving the requirements of the two-party agreement as part of the development, and so they were looking at ways to supplement what they were going to do with the water. And our recommendation on the board at that time was that they take more time and they study it, and they look at trying to find alternatives at the top of the plateau for infiltrating the water. And I think some of you were on the board back then or remember the slide that happened, that they closed westbound I-90, and that was because there was an engineering failure of a water protection system that failed partially due to the infiltrating water that wasn't going downward. It was heading along the foreset beds that are up there that dip to the south and the east. So they got the developer got that under control and came up with some alternative plans and looked at wanting to move some of that water, not all of it, continue to use the infiltration system that's up on top of the plateau, but also move that down to the lower reed. And at that time, I started looking at the monitoring reports that were being presented by the consultant for the developer at that time. And there were some indications back in 2001, 2, or 3 that there were water quality issues even before they started infiltrating the system down at the Lower Reed property. So they continued to pursue infiltrating the Lower Reed, and again, because it wasn't infiltrating the capacity they wanted at the size of the infiltration system, they looked at expanding the Lower Reed and then also connecting a bypass in the North Fork of the Issaquah Creek. And I think what's happened since that time is they're having difficulty infiltrating, and we're seeing that the water that they are infiltrating down below is not treated to the conditions that you need it to be before it hits the lower Issaquah Valley Aquifer. So I think the board or the council and the mayor have a great resource that they can rely on. That's the Rivers and Stream Board. I think there's other boards as well within the city that, if taken the appropriate amount of time right now, and you look in detail at this situation, that there's likely, you know, one of these alternatives that's probably better than the other alternatives, of which I personally think maybe pre-treatment and looking at infiltrating more up where the original design was on the top of the plateau, which gives you an additional, you know, 100 feet of infiltration and treatment. That coupled with a water treatment system is probably an alternative that, you know, might satisfy the infiltrating system and, you know, give you the opportunity to continue on with the stormwater system up there and adding other developments. So, thank you.
Thank you. Are there other people signed up to speak?
Yes, I have some others. I can't read the last name. So Richard K.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you folks today. My name is Richard B. Kupowitz, and I live at 4643 192nd Drive, Northeast in Sammamish, who will be affected by actions that may occur from imprudent decisions in the city of Issaquah. I'm here tonight to publicly comment as a citizen very concerned about drinking water quality so important to this area, quality of life, and the area's development as well. It is my understanding that the city of city of Issaquah, I've got to go to a Sammamish meeting this evening, is attempting to assume segments of the Sammamish Plateau Water and Sewer District in an effort to reinstate a stormwater disposal injection well. The disposal well, the disposal well was closed down by the Department of Ecology in 2008 because of aquifer contamination, and is located in very close proximity to critical water supply aquifers. Aquifer wells. It appears the city's current direction is trying to reduce needed infrastructure improvements to handle the city's stormwater that can be better treated by more costly projects than disposal injection. It may be very expensive litigation. In many very expensive litigation efforts, I have observed all too often myopic efforts to reduce costs while taking great risk when compared to much more prudent infrastructure investments. As an individual quite experienced with the expenses and difficulties of remediating contaminated aquifers, especially critical aquifers, I strongly suggest the city reevaluate its current course. I encourage all parties to come to the table and further advise that the city refocus its efforts to more wisely spend efforts to maintain our critical drinking water quality without disposal wells in such sensitive areas. And again, I thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Janet Wall.
Janet Wall. I live at 22740 Southeast 56th Street. And I am a member of the Rivers and Streams Board, but I'm speaking as a private citizen. I moved to Overdale Park in 1995, which at that time was part of unincorporated King County. In 2000, I was very pleased that we were annexed into Issaquah as part of the North Annexation Area. At that time, we had our own neighborhood water system, servicing about 150 families. So far, Issaquah seems to be much more responsive to environmental concerns, and it's much easier to obtain information about pending developments than the process I had to go through to find out about King County developments. After Overdale put in a new well to meet wellhead protection standards, we had problems with arsenic. The arsenic level was just a little bit over the new standards. So after analyzing our options to see whether we could continue in some way, filter it out, or various different ways, our water board approached Issaquah about tying into their system. But the city indicated that they weren't interested in providing water to us at that time. Fortunately, the Sammamish Water and Sewer District agreed to provide us water and incorporate us into their system. We would have to pay connection fees for the connection to the Cascade Water Alliance and also to update our water infrastructure. We don't have even enough water pressure that would be able to handle a fire up on the upper levels, so we really need to do that. Overdale is toward the end of this long process of annexation into the district, applying for the state funds to help with the system upgrades and forming a ULID to help spread the cost of the connection fees and update fees over a period of years. And the Sammamish Plateau, the district, has been very helpful in helping us with this process. My driveway provides access to one of the district's water towers, and I became friends with some of the workers that service the water district property several times a week. So I know quite a bit from them on what's going on. I heard from them a couple of years ago that Issaquah was interested in a hostile takeover of the portion of the district's water and sewer systems that are within the city's limits. State law supposedly permits this, but it no doubt meant to apply mainly in cases in which small, isolated neighborhood water systems were run by volunteers, like we were, could be incorporated into the surrounding city. The district, however, has a huge, well-run, interconnected water system over 29 square miles that takes in Sammamish, parts of unincorporated King County, as well as the northeast part of Issaquah. It would be difficult to disconnect parts of these jurisdictionally interconnected water and sewer systems, and it makes no logical sense to do so. They've got the wells, some of the wells down here, they've got monitoring stations, various different places. And their offices in Sammamish. It is clear from the city's own technical report, October 19th, 2011, the white paper analysis of operating options of the Lower Reed Infiltration Gallery, that the issue driving the city's desire to take over this portion of the district would be to reduce the likelihood of the district to win the lawsuit in the dispute between the city and the district over the use of the Lower Reed Infiltration Gallery. This option number 3,
45 seconds.
in dealing with the stormwater, high in coliform bacteria and iron from the Issaquah Highlands and potentially from the lakeside development, is estimated to approach $1,500,000 in technical analysis, monitoring, and legal fees. A much better solution would be to install an active water treatment system to clean to groundwater standards the water that is to be injected into the aquifer, estimated to cost approximately the same amount. The annual operating expenses would be extra. This option would leave the district's system intact, would not risk in contaminating the aquifer and the nearby production wells. It wouldn't interrupt Overdale Park's incorporation into the district, and it wouldn't waste money on needless litigation. I would like to feel good about residing in Issaquah. I do not want to pay for litigation that I don't approve of. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Erica Tilikos?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Erica Tiliakos. I reside at 1130 Lancaster Way, Southeast in Sammamish. I too have been a former chair of the Sammamish Planning Commission, and the thing that I have kind of realized with this is how little people really know about this decision that you're about to embark on. I know that public process and transparency and information is really important to try to get everybody on board, so that everybody understands what you're doing and how you're doing it and why you're doing it, so that people don't feel that they've been bamboozled in one way or another. I am a board member of Save Lake Sammamish. I'm not speaking for Save Lake Sammamish, but as a board member who is interested in saving the lake. And I am also the current president of Friends of Pine Lake. We are a local nonprofit group established in the city of Sammamish. The organization's first president, Eileen Stahl, formed the organization in 1998 before incorporation after studying water quality. The original focus was water quality in Pine Lake, but it soon grew to other streams, wetlands, and lakes. Friends of Pine Lake has made continuous efforts to preserve the integrity of our natural environment and protections to water quality. Infiltration is a worthy goal in stormwater management in order to maintain some recharge of our natural underground waters. However, unlike natural infiltration that occurs over large areas of land and over long periods of time, the engineered infiltration systems are really becoming point discharges into the ground. The waters no longer seep slowly over a large area, but rather over a limited area where the water is expected to move into the ground faster than it would naturally. The natural cleansing process of slow infiltration over deep soils is being lost. Therefore, these engineered infiltration systems need to treat stormwater before releasing it into the ground. It seems that the Lower Reed Infiltration Gallery has not been put into use due to water quality concerns of the Department of Ecology and also the Sammamish Plateau Water and Sewer District. Meanwhile, the stormwater is being diverted to the North Fork of Issaquah Creek, where your monitoring seems to show high levels of fecal coliform, as well as other contaminants that are now being carried into Lake Sammamish and degrading water quality in the lake. There has been very little information and discussion on this subject in public forums, and very little has been covered by the press. Yet this will impact thousands of residents here in Issaquah and tens of thousands in the city of Sammamish and in unincorporated King County. I urge the City Council to open up this process to further review by the public and environmental organizations such as ours, and give ratepayers the sense that you have been open and transparent in the process that leads to any decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
August Barber.
Hello, I am August Barbara Lunik Rakita, and my address is 24998 Southeast 155th Place in Issaquah. I also work for Friends of Youth here in Issaquah. And I am here today just to raise awareness and to talk about the social service network on the east side and also in Issaquah. I supervise school-based support programs, so what we do is we try to help students do better in school. I'd like to thank you for your contributions to our programs in the past. I know you have helped with our counseling programs. Our counseling programs help low-income youth receive mental health and substance abuse services. I'd also like to thank you for your support of Healthy Start, and that's a program for young mothers parenting their first child. As an example of some of the work of Friends of Youth, last year they served 1,970 youth who are homeless in various locations. They not only give them a place to stay, but they give them job training if they get into some of the programs. They give them supplies that they need, and they give them referrals to other services that they might need as well. So why am I here? To raise awareness of the many human service needs that are here in Issaquah and on the east side, to ask you for your support when these issues come before you, and also to ask you for your support for a stable funding source for human service programs on the east side. At the present time, most agencies, and by that I mean most social service agencies, really put together funds from many, many different sources. They're always looking for funding, they're always writing grants, and it's a very difficult thing to constantly put that source of funds together. And what a stable funding source would do would allow that time to be better spent serving youth and other residents, and also allow for long-term planning. So thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Gail, 12.
Good evening, council members, Mayor. Thank you for having me this evening. My name is Gail Twelves. I live at 19727 Southeast 19th Street. I'm in Sammamish. And I have two roles here, and I'm going to divulge both of them. One of them, Fred's already laughing. I've already been implicated, so I'm just going to come out with it. I'm a marketing communications consultant. My client is the Sammamish Plateau Water and Sewer District. I'm not here tonight as the marketing consultant. I'm here as Gail Twelves, the activist. My days of activism go way, way back when I was introduced in the mid-90s to low-impact development by Tom Holtz, the father of low-impact development. Soon after my days in leadership in the Sierra Club, I was on both the Built Green Executive Board, chaired the marketing committee. There I was an advocate amongst all the builders and developers of low-impact development. I was also at the same time on the PSRC's Growth Management Policy Board. I was advocating again and wrote a good part of their vision statement on low-impact development, but more importantly on preserve what's on the ground now, don't damage it. There are other ways to do things in a better way. It was during that time on Built Green that there was a Port Blakely representative on our executive board, and I just kept at him about LID, up at that time Grand Ridge, soon to become Issaquah Highlands. I thought, what an opportunity. Things didn't transpire as well that time. I wasn't real open to it, even though I was very, very active as being an advocate of low-impact development. I believe that you can build and you can develop in a less destructive way. Low-impact development gives you that opportunity. After the Camp Creek blowout, that rep from Port Blakely didn't come to meetings for 3 months. So the reason why I've pulled my activist boots back on is because of my concern of the lower Issaquah Valley aquifer. I came to this knowledge, obviously, through my work with the Plateau Water and Sewer District. But I'm really here out of concern for my original issue that's always brought me out in the past, and that's for water. So let me jump into it. The LRIG, Lower Reed Infiltration Gallery. What I've learned is that it seemed like a good idea at the time. In fact, it's the wrong technology in the wrong place. It doesn't have the minimums of requirements for injection wells in a number of ways. One, it's incorrect to state that the soil will filter the impurities out, and here are two reasons why. One is that the soil underneath LRIG is gravel and sand. It is not the typical kind of soil that is required by the state to provide a slow percolation and gradual cleansing of the bacteria and the fecal coliform. The other is that the design standards are insufficient. The state requires a minimum of 25 feet of VADOS, or filtering zone, underneath an injection well, particularly if it's close to an aquifer. You're right on top of an aquifer, and you have at best 9 feet of VADOS zone. And here's the interesting part, is that that VADOS zone disappears when it gets rainy. And when it gets rainy, the aquifer recharges. That's when you're infiltrating stormwater contaminated with fecal coliform that's been washing off the Issaquah Highlands. You're sticking it right back into that aquifer, thinking you're recharging it. It doesn't need recharging at that time. So I want you to think very carefully about the fact that 5,000 units of fecal coliform are going into that aquifer when they shouldn't be. It's not being cleansed out. I've read the reports. You had two options. You chose to assume the district so you could control the wells instead of choosing to actively treat the water. Every other injection well in the state has to treat the water to drinking water standards. I want the city council to go back to that option. As you know, the water district has offered to co-fund that option so that the water gets treated and cleaned before it goes into the aquifer. And as you know, I'm from Sammamish. As a Sammamish resident, I get my water from the Sammamish Water and Sewer District. I'm not confused who I'm paying. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Last on my list is Mike C. Okay, thank you.
Good evening. I'm Mike Collins. I live at 2841 East Lake Sammamish Parkway, Sammamish 98074. By Sammamish rules, I'm required to disclose I'm a current Planning Commission member. However, I am speaking as an individual tonight. It is not uncommon to see paid professionals come to diametrically opposed conclusions. The beer glasses of money and the need for a solution to a problem with no apparent answer pressures those in power to change the angle of discussion. Perhaps definitions move. Capacity becomes congestion. While it may make short-term political or financial policy sense, it does not solve the continuing problem and perhaps creates more problems. Current settled law tells us that injecting runoff is a serious decision. It is very difficult to project the damage water movement will cause in the future. Will it destabilize soils? Will it matter? Injecting surface water untreated for contaminations in direct proximity of our drinking wells appears obviously bad. When consultants come to diametrically opposed conclusions, it is the responsibility of those in power to find for their citizens and future citizens. While a consultant may find the risk to be small, the cost of being wrong is astronomical. Unlike filling in a wetland or polluting a stream, there is no fix for destroying subsurface soils. Restoring an aquifer, especially our water supply and our lake, is an even greater risk with much higher costs. Here the consultants are diametrically opposed. Your responsibility is clearly to your citizens and future citizens to look past definition changes and the technicalities of changing ownership. Ensuring your citizens' basic well-being is your responsibility. Very little is more basic than clean drinking water. Many cities try to have growth pay for growth. In reality, growth usually just increases debt. Surface water is similar in that collecting surface water increases and transfers the pressure and cost from the developers to the public for the greater good, usually for the good of some. Reduce, reuse, recycle. It's become the mantra of how to live sustainably. It is also true for developing. Reducing impervious surfaces, increasing infiltration, contains the burden and the cost of surface water at the site of development. Reusing surface water, rainwater harvesting, decreases the demand for potable water, infrastructure, operating, and maintenance costs. Recycling surface water, treating it, allows the safe downstream use and transport. The real solution, though, Issaquah led developing cities and encouraging Z homes. The same successful strategies should be the guide to all development. Seriously, consultants agree. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Leave the contentious development theories for other cities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other people? Are there any, or is there anyone present this evening who has not yet had an opportunity to speak and who has not signed up? Yes, sir.
My name is Dave Harmon. I live up on the plateau at 22303 Southeast 20th Street in Sammamish. And I've been listening to the people here. I'm not a scientist. I'm really not sure about injections and those kind of things. But I know that 60 years ago, and I've been on the plateau since 1971, I have been a paid member of the Sammamish Water and Sewer Organization for 40 years. I have paid my water bill, and I know that that was formed 60 years ago. And I think it was formed because they were trying to keep the distribution of water and the pricing of water out of political hands. So we have the city of Issaquah would like to take over a portion of the water district. I would feel the same way. I'm against it if the city of Sammamish tried to take over the water district. I think it's an apolitical board. Their only goal is to make sure that the water is cleaned, it's distributed properly, fairly, and at a good price. They are working on sewers, and they work on our behalf. I think we got a political agenda here at the city of Issaquah, and I think there could be a political agenda at the city of Sammamish. And I think we should leave the distribution and the care of water to the experts at the Sammamish Plateau and leave it where it is. If you have issues about injection of wastewater into deep water wells, you should get together with them, you should negotiate, and you should find a solution that's in the best interest of everybody, not just in the best interest of a city or whatever. So I think we should leave it the way it is, negotiate with the Sammamish Plateau Water District, and make sure you take their input. Don't try to annex them or assume them, but let them help you with the problems that you have with the distribution of runoff water.
Thank you. Is there anyone else present who wishes to speak?
Good evening, David Kapler, 255 Southeast Andrews Street. I was thrilled when the Cascade Water Alliance was able to get the Lake Tapps water rights, not because I would ever want to drink Lake Tapps or have to transport that water to the rest of the Cascade service area, which would be extremely expensive, but it gave us some negotiating power, at least with Seattle, so that we could come up with long-term contracts with Seattle for water. Trying to take any risk at all with our aquifer here is just completely foolish and could be extremely expensive down the line. They most probably maybe could treat it here on site with a plant that we would have to, smaller of course than you'd need at Lake Tapps, but you don't want to do anything to trigger the need for Lake Tapps. Hopefully none of you will have to drink Lake Tapps in your lifetime. That's, which would be not just, I mean, it'll be fine if it gets here, but it's just going to be extremely expensive water once it has to be used, if it has to be used. Because of the transportation cost of trying to put that 5-6 foot diameter pipe from here to Lake Tapps, it's just huge cost, plus the treatment plant you'd need down there. Anything you can do to preserve the quality and quantity of our local water supply will delay that need. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who has not yet had the opportunity to speak?
Hi, my name's Connie Marsh, and I have a store in Issaquah at 1175 Northwest Gilman Boulevard, Suite B11, also live in Issaquah, and I talk about the aquifer all the time. And it's disappointing. Oddly, I had never read that white paper, and I had many conversations about the injection wells going down into the aquifer and sort of the lack of SEPA review of turning it into the North Fork and letting it go with what I consider to be improper review. And I have watched the City Department of Ecology and the district sort of bat at each other for years and years and years. And it just seems so much easier to solve the problem. The aquifer is too important to risk. treat it to potable water standards, do the same thing with Lakeside. I mean, we came before you before with the same exact concerns for Lakeside, and the answer to that was, well, the state requires it. Well, the state really hasn't required it for this particular injection well, and it has cropped up problems. So if we want to keep the aquifer intact and we want to have the least amount of risk, as you can see on the white paper, it's sort of a risk analysis, then you pre-treat. And if you are looking at it, I'm going to do this for TOLA as sort of a mathematical balance or a risk comparison. You can spin those numbers through your brain and see what you want to risk and what you want to keep. And every time I come down on the side of the aquifer. So please consider. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else present who hasn't had an opportunity to speak, who wishes to speak at this time? Anyone else who wishes to speak? Third call. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak during audience comments? Seeing and hearing no one else who wishes to speak during audience comments are closed. The next item on the agenda this evening are committee reports, and we will start with Councilmember Faulkner.
Thank you. The new infrastructure committee will be meeting on Thursday, May 9th at 5:30 in the Pickering Room. Currently on the agenda is Agenda Bill 6616, Issaquah Historical Society funding. We're going to get a discussion on transit service changes and also have some discussion on the 2014 to 2019 six-year transportation improvement program. That's the end of my report.
Councilmember Goodman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Land and Shore Committee will meet next Tuesday, May 14th, here in Council Chambers at 5 p.m. We have one item on our agenda, and it is an update, sort of our ongoing discussions regarding the potential updates, revisions to the Transfer of Development Rights Code. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Mertz.
No report.
Councilmember Sheriff.
No report, thank you.
Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Services and Safety will be meeting Monday, May 13th at 5 p.m. in the Eagle Room. 3 items are on our agenda, if passed on consent this evening. 6618 is the first, the mobile automobile licensing plate recognition. 6555 is the consolidation of the development commissions. And 6615 is prosecution and public defense contracts. We will need to be able to have some time with the council members to look for a new time and date of meetings. So we'll discuss that on Monday. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Winterstein.
No report.
Councilmember Butler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The council and city staff held a council goal-setting retreat to develop the goals for 2014, which will serve as budget guidance to the mayor as she develops the proposed budget for 2014. The council will hold a work session on May 13th. There are 2 major topics. One will be the Parks, Recreation, Pool, and Natural Area Park Bond, and the second will be the Klahani potential annexation area. That meeting will begin at 6:30 in council chambers. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Number of items on the mayor's report this evening. There will not be an executive session this evening. The next item, May 19th through 25th, 2013, is proclaimed to be Public Works Week in the city of Issaquah, so all citizens and civic organizations can recognize the contributions that Issaquah Public Works officials make every day to our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life. I will read some of the points of this proclamation. They are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives, and whereas the support of an understanding and informed citizenry is vital to the efficient operation of public works systems and programs such as water, sewers, streets and highways, public buildings, and solid waste collection, and whereas the health, safety, and comfort of this community greatly depends on these facilities and services. Whereas the quality and effectiveness of the facilities, as well as their planning, design, and construction, is vitally dependent upon the efforts and skill of public works officials, whereas the efficiency of the qualified and dedicated personnel who staff Issaquah Public Works Engineering and Public Works Operations departments is materially influenced by the people's attitude and understanding of the importance of the work they perform. Now, therefore, I, Ava Freisinger, Mayor of the City of Issaquah, proclaim May 19th through 25th to be National Public Works Week in the City of Issaquah, and I call upon citizens and civic organizations to acquaint themselves with the issues involved in providing our public works. And as a follow-on to that, the council has heard testimony this evening about two topics. One is the Lower Reed Infiltration Gallery. The other has had to do with an assumption study. And to remind people and inform the public of where we are in these processes, I'll start with a description of the Washington State Department of Ecology and the Lower Reed Infiltration Gallery. As the council knows, the Washington State Department of Ecology currently is considering a permit that would allow the City of Issaquah to use an underground system to return stormwater to the lower Issaquah Valley aquifer. The aquifer is a vital source of drinking water for the citizens of Issaquah, Sammamish, and parts of unincorporated King County. We all drink from the same glass, the citizens of Issaquah and Sammamish. The City of Issaquah has always prided ourselves on providing quality water, and we have a long track record of protecting our aquifer. The underground system, called the Lower Reed Infiltration Gallery, helps to minimize flooding impacts on the North Fork of Issaquah Creek, and it ensures that wetlands receive the water they need to survive. Council will also recall that in 2009, the City of Issaquah and the Department of Ecology reached an agreement to monitor stormwater in that gallery. And to that end, no water has been discharged into the Lower Reed Infiltration Gallery since that time. The monitoring of water has shown that water, under certain conditions, can be discharged safely into the ground. The City of Issaquah then applied for the ecology permit, which is currently under review by the Department of Ecology, who are looking at the data associated with the permit application. And if the department issues a draft permit, that draft would be available for public comment and review, which is part of our open and transparent process. Infiltrating stormwater into the ground is a major requirement under the latest federal standards for addressing environmental protection. And then the council is also aware that there is a study going on having to do with assumption of portions of the water district that are within the city limits, and that again has not been completed, nor has the council had an opportunity, therefore, to review it and to reach an informed decision. I have been asked by media what the council is likely to do, and I would never second guess the policymakers being presented with information and making decisions. So I just wanted to kind of give you a status update on some of the issues that you've heard this evening. Also in the Mayor's report, backed by popular demand, Issaquah's Sister Cities Commission will be holding two events, a Texas Hold'em poker tournament on Friday, May 10th, and a trivia night on Tuesday, May 14th. You are invited to join us if you're looking for a fun way to spend an evening and to help raise funds to bring artists here from our sister city, Chef Show in Morocco, to share their art and culture with local schools in the community during Salmon Days. And for more information or to register, please contact our city clerk's office at 425-837-3000. Next item. In preparation for Election Day on November 5th, 2013, any citizens of Issaquah who are interested in running for one of the open positions will need to file the appropriate documents with King County Elections. The candidate filing period opens at 8:30 a.m. Monday, May 13th, 2013, and closes at 4:30 p.m. Friday, May 17th, 2013. To file for a city office, you must be a registered King County voter within the city of Issaquah. The office of mayor and 4 city council positions are open for the November 2013 general election. And the last item on my report this evening, each year Issaquah community members volunteer to serve on city boards and commissions. Our board and commission members dedicate their expertise and their time to public service through research and recommendations to the city council, mayor, and city departments. And I am taking this opportunity to recognize and thank the people who are the willing volunteers for city boards and commissions. With that, I will ask the council if the accounts have been reviewed.
They have.
Okay? And then I will ask the council's pleasure on the consent calendar. Councilmember Butler.
I would move approval of the consent calendar as submitted.
Second.
Okay, moved by Butler and seconded by Winterstein. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. The next item, which is the first item under regular business, is Agenda Bill 6622, Transportation Concurrency Model Update, and this is a request for the authorization of expenditure and the proceeding on this matter.
Okay, we have a tag team effort this evening. I'll be doing a brief introduction, and Dave Favor from the DSD department will also be doing a presentation with a little more detail on what the $60,000 expenditure is. But as you are aware, the City Council recently held a workshop on the issue of traffic concurrency, and we identified a number of issues that currently face the city on this matter, and made some preliminary decisions to explore and look at moving to a new system. So we're taking some steps. The first step tonight to do that. So our current system is intersection-based. As we've been able to find out, particularly with the adoption of the Central Issaquah Plan, that it is an obstacle to growth. It doesn't resolve existing traffic deficiencies. And it is a developer-based decision-making model, but also a developer-based investment. So in essence, traffic concurrency ends up being contracted out to developers as they come in, they do their evaluation of the impact that their development will have on traffic, and then the decisions related to the improvements that would have to be made to make the system concurrent end up getting funded by the developer. So the city isn't able to really make long-term strategic investments into the system based on that current model that we have. And so some interim steps. Tonight you have an agenda bill in front of you, which would involve a $60,000 investment to upgrade the synchro model. We anticipate developing an interim solution within 60 days to enable development to proceed. So in essence, because of some of the concerns and the issues with the overall concurrency model as currently structured, We would anticipate, we're currently doing some evaluation, that an interim solution would be presented to council at the July council workshop. And we should have a solution that will at least deal with the problem on a current basis. And in terms of longer-term solutions, we'll be researching and developing some concepts. Some of those were very preliminarily introduced to you at the workshop session. So one would be a mobility unit based, one would be some another look at maybe the intersection based model, which is what we currently have, or something else. And we'll be researching a variety of concurrency models. I think 5 of them were presented to council at that workshop. We would estimate that we should have a white paper developed and delivered to council with some of these options by October 2013, and there's going to be an estimated cost of $15,000 to $20,000 to really do that research and take a look at some of the various models in terms of consulting costs. After that is done, we would hope that working with the council, we would actually do the policy development and means testing. So it may be one model that council really wants to focus in, it may be 1 or 2 models. And of those various models, there's going to be selection of policy guidelines and testing that would identify the workability of each model and the various costs. To do that, because you're going to have to essentially run the model on several occasions based on whatever unit ends up getting measured, for legal fees and the estimated design costs is about $300,000. So again, it's a very preliminary estimate. As I think we get through the white paper, we'll have a better idea. And it's also going to be dependent on how many models council wants to test as we start to go through that iterative process. And then we would anticipate that based on that testing, which would be completed by July 2014, that an ordinance adoption and a comp plan amendment would be able to be in place by January 2015. The legal fees affiliated with that would be about, and some minor engineering fees would be about $25,000. So this kind of gives you, a concept of what needs to be done. Dave will go into a little more detail of what this may look like as in terms of the $60,000. As we talked about at the workshop, the current model hasn't been updated since 2007, and so is in some major need of upgrades, and the investment that would be made needs to be made. So even if we end up keeping our current system, we would still have to make this investment into the model regardless. So Dave, I'll let you go ahead and take it from here.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. Somewhere around here, we'll get it.
F5, I think. I've seen that 5 work. Bam.
There you go.
Hi. Good morning. Good evening. Good morning. So we'll tag team, and I'll try and weave this slideshow into what Bob just said, and we'll talk. So we were here a couple months ago, and we just start out with the basics. What is concurrency? Just to remind everyone, it's a state law requirement that defines concurrency as the provision of improvements, as the list you see there, not just streets, but transit, sidewalk, bike lanes, etc. That's in place at the time of development, or within 6 years that there's a financial commitment or mitigation strategies within 6 years. Bullet 2 talks about concurrency law leaves the implementation of that state law up to our local discretion. So level of service standards and process are at our discretion. So to give some context, kind of building on what Bob talked about, first in 1998 was the first adoption of concurrency, and as over time policies have changed and the priorities have changed. 98 was not one new additional traffic trip onto the road system, and there have been several policy updates up to 2010, which is the most recent policy update, which went more towards streamlining, improving methodology to be more consistent with industry standards, elevated the computer modeling from 10 up to 30 p.m. peak hour trips. So about 3 years ago, we went through that process. Why are we doing this now? I think Bob talked about a lot of that. I guess to add to that, as we all know, the Central Issaquah Plan was adopted in December, but just became effective with adoption of the standards 2.5, 3 weeks ago. So we always anticipated that updating concurrency was one of the implementation items needed to take the CIP vision and make it real. So here we are working on concurrency. What are some of those things? Well, we want to make concurrency, bring it around to focus those transportation improvements so that they support the vision that was adopted in the central plan, such as the compact, pedestrian-friendly, mixed-use, small-scale, urban community, all these different phrases we talk about. Along with that, a desire to streamline the review process. That was a goal throughout the CIP process. And then in blue down here, we come to the agenda bill that's on your agenda tonight, which is to fund $60,000 to not talk about policy, but to look at the technical computer model and update that model. It was most recently updated in 2007, and the desire has been to update it every 2 to 3 years, but for good reasons we felt, largely due to the recession, it made sense to delay that. There weren't a lot of developments coming online that need to be folded into that technical model, so we've put that off now for 6 years, and we're kind of pushing that limit pretty well. And we talked about it at the workshop. So here's a summary. We gave a similar introduction in March 26th, followed up by the council workshop with Torsten Lienau, who has been the consultant working on concurrency since its inception. There were 2 action items that night. Action item 2, I think Bob already generally talked about. Action item 1 is the agenda bill we're talking about tonight. And why, what are the needs for that agenda bill? Well, here's some reasons. Again, to form a foundation to update the concurrency policy. And the key point there is that regardless of which model we choose, whether it's updating the current one, or Redmond, or Renton, or Timbuktu, wherever, the technology, the computer model is useful for whichever choice is made. So there's no throwaway there. Second, there are other reasons besides the CIP. We are undergoing the update of the traffic impact fees citywide right now, so we want a good basis for that impact fee ordinance that will be coming to you later this year. The TIP is the Transportation Improvement Plan. The city's always going for funding, asking for funding and grant applications, so we want to have a good basis of what is a snapshot of our current transportation system right now, so that would support those applications. And then looking, what's happened since 2007. So the regional data that the current system is based on is more towards 2030. There's new information to update it to 2040. There has been growth in the surrounding cities of Bellevue, Sammamish, unincorporated King County. So we want to incorporate that traffic growth into the model. And yes, the city has built some roads as well that should be folded into the model. So the I-90 undercrossing is currently not in the model. We'd like to get it in there. In 2012, Public Works Engineering did traffic counts citywide, and it's now 2013. We want to use those counts and fold them into this year's update of the traffic model through this agenda bill. So there's some key items, reasons why it's timely to do this agenda bill tonight. And Bob already talked about action item 2, so I'll go back to action item 1, and there you have it. So that's what I got to say.
Councilmember Winterstein.
Thank you. Thanks, David. Question. So just, I'm missing something really basic. I'm sure you have a simple answer for me.
Okay.
So this update we want to do now is, do we not currently have an accurate model of the way the current road system and the way transportation moves through the city? I mean, what is it we're actually updating?
We are out updating it's pretty close to what you just said. We have a model that shows what is the traffic system, how much traffic is running on our roads as of 2007. So if you run the model today, it would say 6 years ago, it'll tell you what was the road system operating under. So we do not have a 2013 one right now. And it's to give accurate, basic, accurate, you want to start with a good, accurate foundation of what is the snapshot in this time right now of how it's working so that we can base our policy choices moving forward.
And just as a quick follow-on, thank you. Then the assumption is that we have more. Do you have an assumption if we have more or less traffic than it was in 2007?
I don't have that.
Okay.
We know that not a lot of development has happened over that time, so I would guess it's relatively similar to how it's been. But
You've already mentioned that we have at least one new road.
Yes.
4th Avenue undercrossing.
Right. And that's most surely, changed the patterns of traffic throughout our city. So whether it's more, it's certainly different. It's sent it to different places in town. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Scher.
Thank you, Mayor. You got off at exit 15 tonight. At rush hour, it felt like a lot more. I can tell you that.
Thank you.
So my question is related to the cost. Updating the model is about $60,000, and then Bob's presentation talked about $300,000 in another year for policy development and further modeling. With concurrency, you can pretty much set it wherever you want. I mean, if we just wanted to come in and say everything's going to be level of service F citywide, and we could just have tons of development, and there you go, it's done. I mean, you can artificially put the levels of service and the numbers wherever you want them to be. So really, you can conceivably, you can earn that money back in the form of increased development, various fees, tax revenue that we end up getting out of that development over time. But you can do that also if you just set the level of service, at the bargain basement level, and you don't have to spend $300,000 or $360,000 or whatever it adds up to. So my question is, what do we get? What do we get from spending all of this money? We get this shiny new concurrency model. It's an update from 2007. What's the return on investment?
You want to go ahead?
I guess we can both answer. If we, I think one is right now, under the current policy, we are attempting to build really good intersections, right? And if you look at our intersections, a lot of them don't meet our standards. We had several that were identified at the council workshop that were, I think if I recall, it was like 12 intersections that don't even meet our current standards. And so our current system, as it is broken. The second piece is we've got existing deficiencies, and while development can pay for improvements to the overall system, it never deals with the fundamental issues of traffic that we've got within the community as a whole. And so the goal would be to take a broad-based approach with some deliberate thought on how we're going to make improvements to the traffic road network in the city as a whole, and then what role development would play within that, taking a very holistic approach. So looking at transit, pedestrian, bikes, all consistent within that concept, and then coming up with appropriate impact fees that would meet those costs. So under current law, developers can't pay 100% of the cost, but they can come up with, you can charge them less than that. At what level? I think, being able to look at what improvements would have to be made on a regular system-wide basis will help us determine what those fees ought to be. A big part of the cost affiliated with developing the model will be, as we go through and start to make policy decisions, you need to run some examples through that new model to determine what the potential outcomes or impacts are going to be, so that we don't end up making a decision with unintended consequences.
And you'd rather do it at the front end and try and predict those versus implementing a system and having those systems, those potential failures occur after the fact. Dave, if you want to supplement that?
I guess I'd add to that and say, you're right. Today we look at intersections, so we're trying to improve how intersections work. Well, if you go over to the CIP, the central plan, that it's not just about intersections now, right? We're trying to create this community vision that's, roads are part of it, but the non-motorized element is part of it, the built environment, the parks, all of this. And let's step away from just looking at intersections to the more holistic development vision we want to see, and craft this concurrency ordinance to fulfill that vision.
Thank you.
Other questions or discussion? Councilmember Butler?
I would move to authorize expenditure of up to $60,000 for updating the transportation model in 2013.
Second.
Okay, moved by Butler, seconded by Scher. Is there a desire for additional discussion? Councilmember Winterstein.
Thank you. I just want to comment that it certainly seems appropriate to me that we're working with the most current and best available information as we work with our citizens and our other business partners that want to enter into the city. So, and I do remember from the work session that updating the model as we're looking at to do here is really necessary on a regular basis. And we've been almost 6 years now, which is a long time. So I think I'm going to support this because I think it's really the best thing for all people involved that we are working with the most accurate, up-to-date traffic model whether we completely overhaul it or stay with what we're doing right now. It's the right thing to be doing. So I'm going to support this agenda bill tonight.
Thank you. Other comments or discussion? Councilmember Forkner.
It seems to me back in 2007 when we started talking about this, one of the things that we used to do was we used a planning model instead of an engineering model, and it sounds really familiar, like the planning model is exactly what you're saying we should be going back to now and doing away from the engineering model, which was intersections. The planning model looked at sidewalks and roadway segments and things like that. Are we going backwards, or are things just changing, or why is it sounding so familiar that we had to change from that to go to the current system?
I hope we're not going backwards. I'd say we're continuing to evolve. We're responding to as the policies shift, and we're talking in generalities, explaining volume versus plant capacity and all these different reasons. I'd step away from that and say we don't have the total answers yet. I think that's part of why we're spending the money to look at other cities and how they're doing it, and learning a couple different options and bring it back to you and go from there.
Other questions or discussion? Okay, is the council ready to act upon this? All those in favor of the motion to authorize expenditure of up to $60,000 for updating the transportation model in 2013, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passed unanimously. There is one other item. It is not an item of regular business, but an item that I forgot to draw to the council and the public's attention during the mayor's report. And that was this item. Issaquah will soon complete a study focused on potential impacts of annexing nearly 2 square miles, known as the Klahani Potential Annexation Area, PAA. There are 2 public meetings that will soon be held to help explain the findings of that study. And so I'm asking the public to join us in these presentations and discussions on Wednesday, May 8th at 7 p.m. here in City Council chambers, or on Wednesday, May 22nd at 7 p.m. at Challenger Elementary School. And for more information, please visit our website at issaquahwa.gov/Klahani. So these are 2 big, important public meetings And it is well for people to know about them, and I hope that many people will attend them. There is no other regular business to come before the council this evening. And I don't know if there are any other items of other business. Yes, Councilmember Martz.
I'm still getting used to this whole for the good of the order thing. Are we going to do, is for good of the order separate further on in the process?
That's the other business.
We're at that point.
Point.
So I would like to address two things that are going to be coming up before the pick of the Sound Cities Association. The first has to do with King County Metro Long Range Planning. We will be considering the following amendment to the PIC's position. The Sound Cities Association supports the development of a King County Metro long-range plan that includes the involvement of jurisdictions and integrates local comprehensive plans. A note on that is that the service guidelines set priorities for adding or reducing service. As part of a long-range plan scoping implementation, it is critical that Metro continue to consult with local jurisdictions and integrate local comprehensive planning efforts. So unless I hear anybody who thinks that's a problematic position, then it sounds reasonable to me. And then before I ask for other comment,
Councilmember Butler, followed by Councilmember Goodman.
So I would strongly support that position. King County Metro is reaching out to all the jurisdictions within their service area to understand their comprehensive plans and future growth, and they want to be an integral part of that effort. And they have they were involved to a certain extent in the Central Issaquah plan also, and aware of that. So I think that is that policy statement. I would strongly support that.
Councilmember Goodman.
Thank you. What is PIC?
I'm sorry. Sorry, that's the Public Interest Interest Issues Committee of the Sound Cities Association. Sorry, I was just thinking of it as PIC. I don't.
We're quite acronym driven around here.
We are TLAs, three-letter acronyms.
Yes.
The second thing that I wanted to bring up is a bit of a, I don't know if bad news or good news, but we discussed last month tolling, and there was a proposal in front of the PIC that in regards to tolling, and I forwarded on the gist of our council's position, which was shared, interestingly enough, by other sort of east side municipalities, but nonetheless, that particular piece did go forward. However, a more holistic follow-on position for consideration is coming before the PIC this month. And it's kind of long and detailed, but I'll read the intro to it. The Sound Cities Association supports a more comprehensive approach to regional tolling implementation through the formation of a special task force convened by the Puget Sound Regional Council that would advance the review of a system-wide approach to tolling our region's major highway facilities as an alternative to the current path of implementing tolling on a corridor-by-corridor basis. So I would read you the details of this, but there's quite a bit to it. But demonstrating value to toll players, value to toll payers, equity for toll payers, direct and external costs, impact of tolling by income quintile, review of technology available to achieve a regional solution, issues of near and long-term revenues for transit, timing and staging of tolling implementation, and review and comparison of alternative finance options. So, does anyone have any thoughts on this as I carry forward the discussion at the PIC next week?
Councilmember Scher.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, in terms of options, something's going to have to be done funding-wise, because the gas tax is not a sustainable revenue source for transportation funding in our state. It sounded like from the preamble that you were reading, and granted it was just the opening section, that the recommendation is to convene a task force on tolling, system-wide tolling, and that may be the option that is appropriate for the region or for the state. But it seems, in my opinion, that there should be consideration of other options. And we've heard some interesting programs at Eastside Transportation Partnership that have been talked about, a program in Oregon that Don Jaron was telling us about a few months back. Suffice to say, there are other potential options out there. And so, if a task force is to be convened through PSRC or any other, regional entity, in my opinion, it should be to take a broader look at revenue sources and not just limit itself to consideration of systematic tolling, which is a fairly specific funding model. So if it were just the tolling issue, I would say broaden the horizons a little bit and maybe take those 2 cents back with you.
So I do want to clarify, review and comparison of alternative finance options, including road usage charges, VMT. Well,
now that you read on, so again, my comments were based on the section that you read. If there is a broader scope to it, then it certainly would be beneficial to look at all of the options. And I said this when the folks from WashDOT came here before. Really, nothing should be off the table for the state's consideration in terms of ways to figure out this funding gap and revenue necessity that they have. So, look beyond even just tolling.
Councilmember Butler.
And from what you read, Tola, that appears to be consistent with the position that we adopted and formally provided before. As I suspect most folks know, right now WashDOT is just looking at 405 and 167. And if I understand the direction now, this would look at the entire system and not just pick segment by segment by segment. So I think that's moving in the right direction.
Councilmember Winterstein?
Yeah, I'll add my voice to that. I was very pleased to see this. I wasn't at the SCA meeting that time, but that broader, comprehensive look at the larger region, So I'm going to, put my support behind this movement as well.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that feedback.
Any other items to come before the council under other business? Yes, Councilmember Winterstein.
Small thing real quick. Last year I was the honor of serving as the city's liaison to the Chamber of Commerce, but it became apparent that I needed to share some of the work a little bit. So Councilmember Barber will be taking over my role as our council's liaison to the chamber. I know Councilmember Barber's done that in the past. I wish I could continue. I mentioned how I enjoy building the relationships and working with with people, especially people from the chamber. But I appreciate your willingness to step in and take that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just wanted to thank Paul for consideration. It is one of those little issues in town. As a past retailer in town, I still have a very strong, heartfelt desire to work with the chamber and work with the businesses in town and working towards economic vitality. So thank you for sharing that again, Paul.
Right. Any other business to come before the council? If not, the council meeting is adjourned at 8:25 p.m.